So far, I have done a melee camp guide and a range camp guide. And so for this one, I figured I would fuse the two styles together. And so today we will be taking a look at range melee hybrid at Vorkath. So without any further delay, let's go ahead and get right into this guide. So in those other two guides, I've already gone over kind of the details and some of the changes. So I'm not going to go into an insane amount of detail on this setup, but I will talk on a couple of big picture ideas thrown out somewhere in this worn equipment and gear section. And that first big picture idea is we no longer have to worry about off-style crit buff for doing things in hybrid. We just keep the buffs to themselves, like for Meteor Strike and for Imbue Shadows. They only work with their respective combat styles. So you can now think of hybrid as just a self-contained melee rotation and a self-contained range rotation. This premise also applies to any combination of hybrid or tribrid that your heart desires. Obviously today we're just going to be talking about range melee, and the reason I chose this over mage melee is mage got a big nerf, and they said coming up ahead they want to work on making magic a bit more powerful. So I'm going to be leaving the magic guides or any magic based hybrid guides kind of on the back burner until those changes are implemented into the game. Hopefully that's next week, maybe it'll be a week after, who knows when it's going to come out. But that's why I'm going to be focusing here today on range melee as a hybrid. It's also been my favorite hybrid style to just bring everywhere. I've brought it here to Vorkath, I've brought it to Sanctum of Rebirth, I've brought it to Art Glacier, I've even brought it to Zami so far. So if you want to see this hybrid setup at other bosses, please let me know in the comments. But we should take a closer look at the gear that I am currently using. And in the worn equipment side, I just have the full 5-piece Draco Lich set here equipped. It's the same perks as from the Raksha guide. It's kind of my universal setup for all the content I do, where I have Undead Slayer and I have Genocidal on my gear for Vorkath specifically, and the other perks such as C4R5, that's just standard best in slot, and Biting 4 has mobile with it. Ultimatums 4 is good for the dead shot that we will be using. Scripture Full, as far as I'm aware, is best in slot for both melee and range. It seems to be the strongest, at least from all the combat I have done so far. And since it works for both, we don't have to worry about switching books or anything like that, which is nice. I have my Easy K equipped, and I'll talk a little bit later once we get to the example kill why that is, but in short, I have it here equipped so I can stall the special attack. My quiver here has Deathspore arrows in them. The other quivers that I am bringing are Blackstone arrows and Jas Dragonbane arrows. Just ignore the Hydrix bolts in there. I haven't gone through and redone my whole quiver setup, but you don't need Hydrix bolts at all. Just ignore them. Stalker's Ring is still best in slot for ranged, and I'm sure people might be asking about equilibrium setups. Vorkath is the one spot where equilibrium is actually good because everything is going to be hit capping so much that you basically are not really taking advantage of actual critical strikes. However, there's no dyed variants of Draco Lich or vestments in game, and I don't want to have identical armor sets with different perks. That gets really annoying to manage. And also, I don't want to be spending 1 point whatever bill on all of the different equilibrium perks that I have to buy. So I will just keep ignoring equilibrium and pretending it doesn't exist until something changes about it. And that's why I have Stalker's Ring here instead of something like the Reflect Ring or ASR or something like that. Salve Amulet E is absolutely a requirement. It's 20% damage and 20% accuracy. We're only here really for the damage, but definitely bring it. In the max cape, I have my normal perk setup of Defense Cape, Strength Cape, and Attack Cape. And moving on to the inventory, on the melee side of things, I have C4R5, Impatient 4, Devoted 4. This hasn't changed, but something I did change. I happen to find a Biting 4 mobile just sitting in my gizmo bag. I don't really remember creating it, but it came from somewhere, from some armor set or something. And so I went ahead and took off the ultimatums for mobile that I had on here and put this Biting 4 mobile on here, and then went ahead and added Energizing 2. This essentially gives me a little bit extra accuracy. It's like plus 100 armor rating or something like that, which I believe equates to about a 1% accuracy increase, maybe a little bit more. I don't exactly remember the conversion rate between those two numbers, but it is free accuracy nonetheless, which is nice at Sanctum of Rebirth. And since Zamorghiel needs a little bit of help with accuracy, this is also going to help us here. And it also helps me ignore that stupid Precise 6 Ultimatums 4 combo that I don't want to hunt. I don't know about y'all, but I'm kind of tired of hunting gigantic perk combos and whatnot. It used to be fun, but I don't know, I'm kind of over it at this point. It doesn't happen too often, so it is what it is. Maybe I'm just getting into my boomer age on RuneScape. Anyways, I have the rest of the melee set here. I have Enhanced Gloves of Passage. This is all just kind of standard melee best in slot stuff. I have Champion's Ring here, again, for helping with accuracy on Zamorghiel. Now, one thing I did change out is the perks on my Bow of the Last Guardian, because I do end up wanting to buy a second Bow of the Last Guardian to have as a Karoming swap. So this one has an Aftershock 4 Eruptive 2 on it, and again, this is another perk that I just found in my gizmo bag. I don't remember when I created it. I don't remember what weapon it came off of. It probably came off of a Blightbound or something like that for when I was doing who knows where it came from, honestly. And I had a P6R1 left over, so I went ahead and tossed that on there. Just kind of like an old standard setup, but I have Aftershock 4 on here instead of Karoming 4. Technically, the best single bulg setup, I believe, is Precise 6 Karoming 1 and then Aftershock 4 Eruptive 2. But since I want to eventually do the double bulg setup and just have two of them there, you know, the Karoming 1 and the Aftershock 1, I'm just running the Aftershock bulg right now, and it does feel like a somewhat decent DPS increase over Karoming 4. I'm sure some math wizard is probably going to actually me on this, but it is what it is. Now, a lot of people will ask why I have a physical SGB instead of the EOF, and that is because a tier 92 weapon using its special attack with a salve amulet on giving you 20% damage is going to be significantly stronger than if I wore a tier 100 weapon with no 20% damage increase at all. But anyways, the perks on the SGB are P6 AS1 and then Eruptive 4 Ruthless 3. The best in slot perks for this spec might be different now, but this is what I've had forever, so it's just gonna stay like that. In the EOFs I have 3 of them. I have a Mercy Dagger, I have an Annihilation EOF, and I have a Darkbow EOF. For those who don't know what Annihilation does, essentially you use the spec and every single hit splat you do gives you 1% additional damage, and I believe the whole thing lasts for 20 or 30 seconds. Actually, I can just look right here and hover over this, and yeah, it is a 30-second duration. And the only caveat with using the Annihilation spec is once you cast it, if you switch weapons, you completely lose the effect, but if you switch amulets or other gear, you're fine. So you can use an Annihilation spec, you can go back to your Amhej and be just fine and run a bunch of damage, and then add in a dagger spec and go back to Amhej. Your Annihilation will be there just fine. And the reason I have a Necromancy main hand here is just for in case I screw something up on Zamorghiel and he happens to be at like 28k or 30k or something like that, you can use Invoke Death to kind of quickly just kill him. Although with this method that I've been using, you shouldn't be running into that issue, but you know, mistakes happen, issues happen. It's nice to have backups here in order to just secure a kill. And that's also why I actually bring, compared to most other Vorkath farmers, a decent amount of food, where I have 4 Blubbers and 2 Guthix brews. To some of you out there, this looks like a minuscule amount of food, but if you look at some of the other high-end Vorkath farmers, some of those guys are bringing like a Guthix Rest and a Blubber, and that's it for the entire kill. I don't like to play that risky. I like to just go for safe, consistent farming kills. At least safe and consistent for me, not what is on paper safe and consistent. Because what's on paper safe and consistent and what you're actually able to do with all of the different factors of actually executing said rotation being safe and consistent, those are usually 2 separate things, at least in my case. And rounding out the rest of the preset, I have an Elder overload salve, I have an adrenaline renewal flask, I have Zamorgiel's Nexus here just to hold stuff for bone shield, some vuln bombs, and I do have an empty space here so that way when you finish the kill, you can just immediately teleport out and not deal with that stupid mechanic where you have to like claim the loot from the guard lady or whatever the heck her name is, and she like runs out, and then if you try and like right click but you don't do it at the right time, she just runs to where Zamorgiel died, and it's annoying. The empty space here is just so you can teleport out, and then when you go back to do another kill, you just right click claim loot, your chest will pop up here for the previous kill, and you can just go in and do another kill. Here are the rune pouches just in case you want to see what's inside of them, and we'll just be on the Lunar's spellbook, nothing too fancy there. And if I load up my bank preset here, I'll just quickly show off the relics here. I'm just running my normal setup with range involved, and that is heightened senses with Zerker's Fury and Font of Life. I still like the adrenaline overhead compared to saving adrenaline with Deadshot. It's just a personal preference. I'm sure it's not the most efficient, but it's what I've been used to for years at this point, so I'll just keep doing it until I finally decide to go learn something else. But old habits do die hard. And then from the bank preset, we will be using Lantanime sticks, Spirit Weed sticks, we will be using Powder of Penance, and we will definitely want Powder of Protection. For those who don't know, Powder of Protection does exactly what it says here in the tooltip. It gives you an additional 10% damage reduction for a total of 60% on your Deflect and Protect prayers, the overheads. Now this doesn't stack with the Amulet of Souls buff already giving you the 10%, so most people think this is pointless, and in most cases it kind of is if you're just mainlining an EOF. But what it allows is if you're using something like Amhej, or you're using a Salve or a Zealots, or even like a Demon Horn or something like that, it'll give you the same amount of protection as if you were wearing an Essence of Finality in the first place. So when you're amulet swapping, you will always take the same amount of damage no matter what. And then rounding it out, we'll get a Bonfire from Wars. I'll use the Thermal Flask here, and then I have an Overload and a Summoning Renewal that I will drink, and then we'll be on a Ripper Demon. And I think that's enough yapping. Let's go ahead and get into an example kill. Alrighty, we have the preset loaded up and ready to go. Now I have to talk a little bit about the rotation here because there are a bunch of different rotations. If you join the Vorkath Discord, it's going to be completely different as to what I'm doing here. This is just my personal farming method for when I want to just run some solo Vorkath and not worry too much about getting the most efficient kills per hour or anything like that. If you want to go faster, there are definitely better setups, but this is the one I'm doing, so feel free to take as little or as much information as you want from this. Now what I like to do is stall an easy K spec and release it on Zamorgiel with a piercing shot, and then do a Gricko and another piercing shot, so that way Zamorgiel is marked for Flamebound Rival. I've built up all of my Death Spore stacks already, and I can just move on with the kill there. This gives you the big boy easy K spec when you're dealing with Zamorgiel, and considering how powerful melee is in its current state, this is borderline overkill for Zem. It's mostly only used in a carry for a Grandmaster situation, but I like to use it in solo to just guarantee the kill. The faster method, but a bit more risky, is you bring Leng Swords, you don't stall an easy K spec, you just run in and do a ranged rotation, and then you use Lengs with an Annihilation buff in order to just do all of the Zem damage. It works fine. I've definitely done it before. I've played with it, but I usually come back to this easy K method because it is the most foolproof, the most dummy resistant, and potentially future-proof method we have right now, because who knows if a month down the road or 3 months down the road, if Jagex finally decides to make melee just not the most broken combat style, but I digress. And so the way this works is I will stall the easy K on this dummy by just clicking on it and then clicking my special attack keybind, grabbing more adrenaline, and going off to the races. Now there was an update today where we no longer have to worry about just using dive and incantations to hold a stall. You can actually use surge and escape to hold your combat stance, and it doesn't wipe the stall. Neither does sigils, nor does runic charge. So this is a massive ease of use update for stalling. Never thought I'd see the day, but here we are. And so the order of operations, it's gonna be kind of quick when I try and call it out to do the kill, but to just explain it once before I do it is stall the easy K, grab adrenaline, go into the instance, maybe use one incantation. I will then go through the doors and then I'll run into the instance a little bit, and then I will hit my bladed dive, or actually it's my dive keybind, I should be specific here, and then I will wait like a tick or two for me to get close enough, and then I will press my left click, then target cycle, then my bow equip, and then I will hit piercing shot, all in the same game tick, and then I'll just start calling out the rotation after that. But that's definitely enough yapping. Let's go ahead and do this kill. I'll use darkness just without a vamp aura to help future proof a little bit, but we've stalled our easy K, grabbed our adrenaline, and we'll do that sequence that I listed out beforehand. Make sure we have no loot to claim. Go ahead and go in, go through the doors, run forward a little bit, over, move a little bit, dive, target cycle with the piercing shot, Rico, and then another pierce. And then we'll go ahead and hit DS, and it's mobile now, so we can just move around, imbue shadows, equip our Dragonbane arrows, and then Gale shot into a rapid with our sigil. Then here, I like to hit a Bow of the Last Guardian spec, dead shot into a snapshot, and then a dark bow. Re-equip my salve, hit a Gricko, physical SGB spec, and then hit snipe. Maybe a snap into a second snap, kind of looking at the HP here. And then I'll use a Blackstone Arrow Gricko, swap over to my melee, divert, annihilation spec, and then here I'll hit the first bleed just to help with some stacks, anticipate, Zerk with the A-pot here, barge, G-flurry and run out, and then run in with the overpower, bleed the assault, and then just chaos roar here into a dagger spec. Maybe hit another rend into an overpower, and then I'll go ahead and hit my easy K spec. Another dagger spec. I ran out of overload, but it should be fine. And then finish off with a punish, and there's a kill. You're gonna have to do a little bit of improv towards the end based off of damage. It's not always gonna be 100% consistent, but as you can see, it's pretty straightforward if you have an understanding of the individual rotations already. If you understand how a range rotation works and you understand how a Zerk rotation works, then you can reasonably figure out that, all right, just do my DS over there and then Zerk over here, and then you can kind of just put all the pieces together, and with a bit of practice and trial and error, you should be able to get into some kills relatively quickly. Words are difficult, but that is how I do Vorkath when I am just running some solos and just want to get some KC. And since we're here, we'll just go ahead and grab our loot. Oh, I hit quick leave on accident. You know, it is what it is. Let's go ahead and grab our loot real quick. And that's all I really have to say about that.